Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a topic that's becoming increasingly relevant for all business leaders: how AI can revolutionize daily operations. And who better to discuss than Dr. Daniels from We Treat Feet, a practice that has been successfully serving the Maryland area's foot and ankle needs for over 20 years. Dr. Daniels, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Right. Just have the general conversation, right? Over the 20 years of your experience, what's the significant challenges that you have faced in building and growing We Treat Feet?
So I joined single practitioner 24 years ago in 2002 when I finished residency, and subsequently, became a partner and then bought out and started to grow. I'm a victim of be careful what you wish for because you just might get it.
Yeah.
So, over the years, I've accumulated, quite a large practice through both acquisition and de novo growth. And, we have brought staff with those, doctors have come with those, equipment issues have come with those, different EHR systems, and sometimes paper records still come with those. So we've been just kind of building up. And, the biggest problem we have is integration. Whenever you are integrating two cultures together, that's the biggest hurdle. And it all comes down to how much buy-in is there on both sides. And, everybody thinks they want to buy in until all of a sudden you have to teach them this new way of doing things. And suddenly the
Right.
buy-in seems too expensive.
Right. And your website emphasizes getting patients back on their feet again. Can you share a memorable patient success story that truly highlights the impact of your work?
So, as podiatrists, there's many aspects of foot and ankle medicine that we practice. And the thing that I concentrate on the part of my life that is still a practitioner is treating diabetic wounds and doing diabetic limb salvage or preventing amputations for patients. So there have been hundreds of patients who, we've been able to save their limbs literally where they'd gone come to us for second opinions after they were told they needed amputations. You well, not to sound, too pompous. There just is just too many to count. I'd like to think we're good at what we do. Patients seem to think we're good at what we do. And listen, you can't always save everybody every single time. But if we can get to them early enough, we can make interventions that really make a difference. And again, I get cards from people. I get phone calls from family members after mom and dad had passed away. I've been mentioned at people's funerals. That's the one thing that really just freaks me out. I'm like, you see somebody for 10 minutes once a week for a year, and 2 years later they die, and at the funeral the family members are mentioning how great you were to them, and I'm like, I feel bad for these people because if they have to mention the doctor being good to them and part of their remembrance, I'm like, come on, it's family, it's friends, it's what you did in life, it's the building's named after you, or whatever your goal was in life at that point. But that I think is very, very humbling in the sense that people actually remember you. I mean, you encounter hundreds of people every single week, and sometimes it's hard to remember. But we have patients who come back. I saw somebody the other day that I last saw 18 years ago.
Right.
The fact that they remembered me to come back, I mean, that's kind of, it's a good feeling when it happens. So, but I try not to treat any of my patients any differently than any others. So I never say special patient or that. I mean, there's more complicated and less complicated cases, but everybody's important. I always say everybody has 2 feet, and if they don't, I just charge more.
Yeah. But it shows how truly remarkable that you are touching their lives if they are mentioning it in their funerals.
It is. It's a humbling, and quite frankly, it's a little bit creepy. Um, there's a big funeral home down the street from my office, so I have patients who unfortunately end up there, not because of my care, but end up there all the time. And so I go to probably an unusually large number of funerals for people I almost don't know. But yeah, when you're sitting there just with everybody else in the audience, and the daughter comes up and says, "Oh, and we were so grateful, Dr. Daniel saved their leg," and most people probably don't know who I am, but I still I kind of shrink into the chair a little bit. It's almost
Yeah.
embarrassing to me. I want my work to stand for itself. I'm not too big into me. I tease people all the time. I might have said to you in our pre-podcast emails that I have a face made for radio.
Nice. Okay, let's talk about the operational side of an independent medical practices. With over 20 years in practice, right, you have undoubtedly seen the evaluation of healthcare operations. What are some of the most time-consuming or repetitive tasks that you and your team do at We Treat Fit that you face on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
So we try to divide and conquer in those aspects. So my portion of the practice that I do personally is I do all of the medical executive work. So anything having to do with medical policy or with equipment specifically that we're going to use, or different drugs, different supplies, those sort of things. Um, I'm also the chief marketing officer as well, and the chief financial officer. So I handle all the outgoing
CCAT.
payments. I don't. I always say, if you want to meet my CMO, it's nice to meet you. Our operations people, we have a VP of operations who handles the billing and collections side, as well as all of the staffing side, HR stuff that comes up. And then we have two area coordinators who coordinate supply chain and day to day labor operations, at our respective offices. So we try not to kind of overstep. We try to delegate the things out that we can. One of the reasons I pay all the bills is horror stories I heard when I was first starting out about, office managers stealing from the practices and setting up credit cards in people's names. And I'm like, well, I'm not giving that authority to anybody else. So I'm the only one who can sign, pay the bills. But those are the sort of things. And then when we start to have overlap, the little bit that we have, like for example, retirement kind of goes between finance and HR at the same time.
Mhm.
HR is responsible for getting people to sign up and do their paperwork. I'm responsible for making sure the payments get sent. And sometimes there's some crisscross there as an obvious thing that overlaps. And not being in the same location, because we're spread all the way from, Washington, D.C. up to, central Pennsylvania.
Right.
It creates a problem where we really need, solid communications. So,
Mhm.
obviously we have email, and we use, Google as our office provider. We have a special HIPAA compliant messaging app that we use, and then we still text for non-patient related things, those sort of things. But phone calls are becoming, less and less frequent, primarily because everybody's busy, and it's easy to stop, send a text, and go back to what you're doing than to sit there and have a phone call and, oh, how's your mom, and what happened with the Orioles yesterday, and small talk has been eliminated from our vernacular almost in business.
Right.
Aside from the difficulty with communications, it's also losing that personal touch that you have with your coworkers.
Right.
I know people who work from home and almost never see their coworkers ever other than on a screen. So,
Right.
that's, you kind of miss that small office, family feel where, you go into an
Mhm.
office and the doctor's there, there's a front desk person and a medical assistant and a back office person, and the four of them are, a band playing in tune with each other. You kind of miss that. And, when you get to be, large enough to have, 50 or 60 employees, which is small by business standards, but fairly large by a podiatry practice standard, you just don't even know who everybody is anymore, because there are employees
Right.
I never meet, or I see once a year at our Christmas party. So,
Right.
that's really where the things, that kind of loss of personal touch, that has happened as we've gotten growth, is probably our big operational issue that happens. And then we have issues related to, patient care, issues related to billing. My phones are a constant source of problems all the time. Those sort of issues that I think lots of practices suffer with.
Right, right. But you have seen enough share of the problems with like patient intake, record keeping, billing. Where do you feel that the biggest inefficiencies lie? Like not just in your practice, but in general. Where do you think that the biggest inefficiencies lie? Like we talked before in the podcast, the more time you can spend with the patients, the better. But these are the auxiliary things that always take time and make you not spend the time that you wanted to with the patient. Given your experience, where do you see that these inefficiencies lie? And like how
Well,
much
my
time do you think your team spends on it?
Sure. So the inefficiency lies in the fact that we have all of these software packages that are supposed to be, an all in one box. and none of them all, and they don't talk to each other. So we have lots of all-in-one solutions. We have an all-in-one phone solution. We have an all-in-one health record solution. We have an all-in-one radiology solution. We have an all-in-one lab solution. Yet we're still printing PDFs and importing them and doing things like that because the integration is not there. And we've looked at some of the integration things that are around, like N8N and those sort of things. Except now you start getting into API issues and you start getting into HIPAA related communication issues, and it becomes much more complex than somebody with my limited technology knowledge can possibly understand. And then it becomes very expensive to try to pay people to do it with no promise that they can actually get it done. So I would love nothing more than to take an X-ray and have it automatically appear in that patient's chart, but that doesn't happen. We have to print it as a PDF and import it into the health record system. When we answer the phone, if we take a phone message, we have to take that message either in text form or oral form and put it into the EHR system. When we have patient payments, we have to put it in the EHR system and put it into QuickBooks. So there's all of these inefficiencies that if we had truly had a all-in-one solution would be better, but I have lots of all-in-one solutions and not one of them is all-in-one.
Right, right. Yeah, what they call about the software, right? It always says it can do everything, but it always never do everything.
Exactly right. Yes. It's kind of
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
promise you make to your spouse before you get married.
Right. Right. And what are the consequences that you see because of these bottlenecks? Like more about your staff morale or your patient experience? What are the consequences that you see because of these inefficiencies?
So it's interesting that we see, because some of these things that are supposed to be efficient cause more inefficiencies. And for example, patients now have access to their medical records whenever they want them. They can go online at the portal and start looking. And from time to time, we get, I call them nastyograms from patients saying that's not right. Well,
Right.
we make mistakes. People hit wrong buttons, literally. I got a call
Mhm.
yesterday because I accidentally put left in a chart that should have been right. Those sort of things. But it's the patients being able to view their records out of context sometimes that makes a difference. And the other problem is, as I mentioned, since our all-in-one phone system doesn't talk to our all-in-one electronic health record system, phone messages are a huge problem because they have to be, translated, moved, put in. And, I see all the time, I'm sitting in a treatment room discussing with a patient who says, well, I called and somebody told me to do this, and there's no record of that call. Now, you would think
Right.
with our all in one solution that transcribes everything that I would have that and know what happened, and I don't. That's a huge inefficiency because then if it's a serious enough issue, we have to investigate. So we have to pull the phone number they called from, and we got to go pull the phone log, and we got to find out who took that call or what extension that call went to and went off into fantasy land. We have phone messages that I say go off into the ether. They disappear. Patients swear they leave them. We can never find them. We don't know where they went, and we look, and then it says call abandoned on our log. And we're like, well, if the call is abandoned after 18 seconds, they couldn't have left much of a message now, could they? So are the patients not being truthful? Sort of those inefficiencies. Any one of those by itself is nothing, but when you start adding them together, it really takes up a ton of time just
Yeah.
chasing down, trying to figure out what happened, which, by the way, is all uncompensated time for us. We only get compensated for providing care for patients, not for dealing with all of this, accessory stuff that goes on. Yet it's really important. I need to know if somebody told my patient to stop taking their medications, I need to know who did that and why, and what the solution was, and why I found out about it when I'm seeing the patient, not before it happened when they actually call.
Yep. Yep. Death by thousand cuts. So
Yes.
the topic of AI in business is everywhere. From your perspective, what areas within the independent practices like we treat fit do you believe AI could have the most significant impact on simplifying the daily
Well,
operations? Probably.
yeah, in our practice, the game changer with AI came with ambient listening technology. We've been using that now. It's probably about a little over 18 months. I was a very, very early adapter. We worked with a company that did our voice dictation transcription, an alternative to Dragon that was, less expensive. And they introduced an ambient technology very, very early in this process, and we've been using it ever since. And, what it made me realize, and I tend to be a little bit more anal retentive about my medical records than most of my colleagues, is no matter how much I was putting in my record, I was not putting everything in my record. There were things that I was discussing that were just slipping by because I considered them just part of casual conversation, but in actuality, they're medical advice. I would, people have diabetes, and I'm always telling them to check their blood sugar and to watch their diet and to get some exercise. But, that wasn't the stuff I was documenting. I was documenting the diabetic stuff with their feet. So now all
Right.
that stuff that I actually say ends up in their notes, which is excellent for me because, patients, if they go and look at their record, they're like, oh, yeah, he did say that, because people forget 90% of what I say when I walk out the door. So that was a game changer. The problem is it didn't actually improve our efficiency, which is what everybody claims that AI is. My Facebook feed is inundated with AI companies trying to save doctors time. Oh, the note is done. Well, sort of, because sometimes the AI gets confused about who's speaking.
Hmm.
So when I went on vacation, my patients who are in the middle of active care and coming frequently, I tell them where I'm going to be and I tell them what they need to do if there's a problem. So I come back and, oh, how was your vacation? Oh, it was great, thank you. Oh, what did you do? Oh, we did this, this, and this. And next thing I know, the transcription comes up. Patient just got back from Aruba. Patient went circling. It's like, no, that was me. It doesn't know the difference. Or if there's a third person in the room, then it really gets confused sometimes. So it does that. It also does hallucinate. We do see this from time to time. As I mentioned, I'll tell somebody, okay, make sure you take your meds, check your blood sugar, eat diet, get some exercise. And next thing I'll sit there and I'll read a paragraph about insulin levels and monitoring on a daily basis and things I did not say. Um, and I understand why they're there, because most of these programs are written basically on a primary care kind of basis. They're really written for primary care physicians who are the ones that need to do that. But again, it's not what I said, and it's not a verbatim transcription. It is it is an aggregate of the conversation into a medical record form, and that really slows me down. My other doctors just cut and paste and go on. I can't do that. I actually read the stuff before I cut and paste it, and even when I do that, sometimes I miss stuff. So that
Right.
was an issue. And the biggest issue that we had with AI that nobody talks about is the fact that you can't really use AI for the physical exam portion of your note. You can use it for the subjective portion at the beginning, and you can use it for your assessment and your plan, because those are all spoken verbally. But when you're doing exam findings, you're not usually verbalizing them. So, if we start verbalizing them so the AI picks it up, oh, a patient has 2/4 dorsalis pedis and posterior tibial pulses bilaterally, the next thing you hear is, what does that mean? And now you're slowed
Right.
down because now you're explaining your exam findings to the patient, where before you would just scribble them in or punch a couple buttons in the EHR and just put it in automatically. Now it's kind of prompting a conversation for something that's completely normal and doesn't require a conversation. So it's not very good at us being able to do the physical exam components unless you're, really strong about those. And then sometimes it makes some stuff up and it puts stuff in the wrong category as far as which, body system we're talking about. We're talking about something musculoskeletal and it's putting something in a dermatologic section. Things that probably at the end of the day don't matter too much, but I like my notes to be clean and simple, and I don't want to see derm findings in my orthopedic exams. So that has been that. And then the other side where we've really seen a lot of efficacy has been with um, our uh, uh, our blogs and our written content and our website, and things where we're able to put out a lot more promotional material, a lot more educational material for patients,
Mhm.
just because AI can write it. I mean, again, it all has to be reviewed, but in my opinion, it's much easier for me to review something about a bunion than to sit there and originally write it. So I'll do
Mhm.
that, and then I'll go back and change something in every single line. I mean, I never like the way it works. Even if I tell it to sound like me, it doesn't. So I change everything back. But it's basically providing you an outline with what would make a good length informational sheet for either our website or our blog or one of our Twitter posts or whatever we do from a marketing standpoint to get our name and get our information out there.
Right, right. I mean, you have covered a lot of things in there. But how about appointment schedules and these things? How do you see that the follow-ups that you have to do on a daily basis, or the getting the insurance information from the people beforehand, so that you're not worried about it when the visit is happening? How do you see that AI can help with that?
And that's an excellent question. And we debate that all the time. So for years and years and years, I did not want our reminder calls done by a robot. Nobody wanted to hear, hello, you have an appointment on Tuesday, 3:30 at nobody wanted to hear that. So we did, and we still do our verbal calls by hand. It's a
Mhm.
touch point. You want a person touching a person. You don't want a machine touching a person.
Mhm.
We get bombarded daily with people who want to do AI scheduling for us. And there's a huge problem that we run into with AI scheduling. Number one is it's easy enough for a person to call you, give you all of their personal information, including their social security number and blood type, and then not show. If they could just do it over a computer and not talk to anybody, I think the appointment value declines even further. And then there's the issue where, for example, I am the first name on the door. I'm the one who's been in the practice the longest. Everybody knows me. So the majority of the calls for my area come and those patients are want to come to me. And I can't see all of them. That's why we have a whole bunch of doctors to be able to handle the
Mhm.
volume. And, you know, if we're doing an AI, the AI might say, oh, Dr. Daniels is away that week and he can see you in June. Oh, okay, I'll take that appointment in June. No, they won't. They'll go see somebody else. Meanwhile, Dr. Smith could have seen her tomorrow. So we have that component of it that does that. And then the third component of it also is there are certain doctors that shouldn't be scheduled certain problems. And I've had AI companies tell me, no problem. We'll fix that. We'll make sure it's pragmatic and it knows not to do it. Well, it knows not to do it, but that's just as it knows not to schedule somebody with ankle arthritis with somebody, doesn't mean somebody's talking about pain in the back of their heel should get scheduled with them. So AI
Mhm.
has its limitations with that. So to date, we're
Right.
still doing manual input of our phone calls. We do have a
Mhm.
texting system with our all-in-one communication system. So we can have patients text us either pictures or typed version of their demos or those sort of things. And obviously we have new patient paperwork that's on the website for printing so they can come in with it. Nobody ever does. And we've actually reduced it significantly as we now do a lot of it with the medical assistants in the initial interview in a treatment room. So we haven't been able to really, get AI to answer the phone in a way that helps the people. We attempted
Mhm.
to do an AI service, and it became it became an answering service, is what it basically was. So it would get all the patient's information correct most of the time. And then it would go to a screen, and somebody would then have to either call that patient or pick up that call or do something to finalize the appointment time and to make sure that we knew, who to get a referral. Because, sometimes it's on the card because you could have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but you would have a plan that needs a referral or doesn't need a referral. And patients don't usually know that stuff. They don't know what insurance they have. As a matter of fact, they get mad at me if their insurance doesn't pay for something. How's that for fun? But so they don't know. But our staff is trained to look and know what words to look for in the back of a card to say, oh, you need a referral. I don't know how well you could do that with AI, given the sheer number of different plans that exist. I mean, I guess if they want, once you've seen it all, you can tell it. But I can't sit here and say to you, oh, make sure any card that has this, this, or this, they get a referral. Can't do
Right.
that.
Right.
So it makes it a little difficult to give the AI the information it needs. So as a result, we're still using live humans. We've talked about doing some outsourcing and those sort of things. As I said, the phones are the biggest problem I ever have. I can't believe how many people will accept a job answering a phone who don't know how to answer a phone. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Right. Right.
So I do think that there's room for AI to improve there. And I do think someday we will be AI. And I know a lot of systems and bigger health clinics are moving in that area. We just haven't figured out a way to get it to work with the unique set of facts that we deal with.
Correct. Correct.
Excuse me.
So for a practice owners like you who are trying to implement AI to simplify operations, right? What would be your advice, and where do they start? Like.
Well, I think if you're a one doc shop, which is very rare these days now,
Mhm.
it's super easy to do because, it just can replace, or help augment for a single person. Every once in a while, I will get very upset at my staff and threaten to replace them with robots, which i.e. is kiosks in my waiting room. I'm like, a kiosk wouldn't talk back. A kiosk wouldn't get sick. But we also have problems regarding staff. Like, for example, a lot of our medical assistant staff and secretarial staff are, younger moms, and they have kids, so they can't come in until the kids go to school or the kids go to daycare. I would love AI to be able to come. I would love to start early. I'm an early person. I would start at 7 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning seeing patients. Can't get any
Mhm.
staff there that early. It's just me and the cockroaches. So, so that's a limitation because we've never been able to find staff that can either come early or stay late so we can adjust schedules to help with patients. And we're kind of stuck in this, like everybody else, is 8 to 4, 9 to 5, time frame of when we can be open during the day because of the limitations of staff. And I would hope that we could get AI to be able to replace enough staff that we could at least start our day early in the morning, or have enough support from the AI to be able to gather all the patient information and aggregate it in an appropriate format in the system that we need it to, for that purpose. In the medical record world, it's consolidating like crazy, and there's a couple of big players. And one of the big pushes from the Athenas and the Monbeds of the world is that they're starting to bring in all these modules and integrate them with Modmed and with Athena. So in theory, yeah, all my problems are supposed to be solved. But as I said again, I'll believe it when I see it.
Right. What trends are you seeing on the innovation part of this? Like, what trends do you see that's going in the right direction?
Well, I mean, again, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation where you're losing that personal touch.
Hmm.
The busier the office is, the busier the places, the less personal touch you have anyway. It's just a matter of volume. People can only handle so many interactions an hour. And everybody has bad days, except AI doesn't have bad days. But, that personal touch of, oh, hi, it's good to see you again. Or, oh, how's your mom? Or, oh, hey, what happened with that thing you told me about? That's dying out in the humans and doesn't exist with AI. AI can't do that, not with any sort of, sincerity. So that bit of it has been dying out because everything in medicine these days has to be better, cheaper, and faster. And if it's not better, cheaper, and faster, it's no. That's the way medicine is these days. So faster means faster in and faster out the door. And there is definitively an art form of being able to get in and out of a patient's room in 10 minutes without them feeling rushed. Am I good at it? I don't know. You have to ask my patients. I try really hard to be. And I try to dedicate the amount of time I absolutely need with people. I don't leave. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I got to go. We don't have timers in our rooms. But at the same point is there's certain things that take time and there's certain things that don't take time. If you're here for a high risk foot care visit and all I'm doing is basically cutting your toenails and you got nothing new going on, I should be able to get in and out of that room in just 2 or 3 minutes. It does not take very long. That being said, is the new diabetic who has a wound is going to take me a lot more than 10 minutes. So it has to balance out in the end. And those limitations, that lack of personal care, that lack of being able to give the patients adequate time is a problem. That's tough for me to solve with AI. I already use the ambient listening, so I'm not sitting there scribbling notes or pressing buttons on a computer. uh, you know, it's a reimbursement challenge with insurance reimbursements having not kept up with inflation and everything going up in costs. So I'm not sure that portion of my problem really has a simple solution coming down the pike. But all
Right.
of my front office stuff could be relegated, and most of that could be made with AI. A lot of my back office stuff, as far as postings and call follow ups and appointment scheduling and those sort of things, in theory, can be done with AI, and we can implement them. The problem is if we have to take things from one system and put it in another, well, what do I need two systems for? I might as well have somebody who would be the one doing it in the first place. Two
Right.
birds, one stone. And that's
Right.
kind of where we are right now with the technology as it exists.
Right. Yep. Yep. Dr. Daniels, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation about the practical applications of AI in health operations. We treat you best of luck for we treat feed.com. Uh, Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.